Well, for more on the latest finance and market news, we're now joined by Suzanne Haddan, who is the Managing Director at BFG Financial Services. Suzanne, always great to have you on a Saturday morning. Now, Joe just mentioned there, US consumer sentiments plunged. It's the same situation here in Australia as well. We saw the Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Confidence Survey showing that sentiment had fallen to its lowest point in 11 months. We're in the middle of a lockdown, New South Wales, Victoria, Melbourne and South Australia as well. And yet economists remain optimistic. Why?
Well, the first point is that the sentiment is still 30% higher than it was a year ago, so that's a plus. But interestingly, though not surprisingly, the vaccinated respondents, who were the majority, were optimistic, 10% more optimistic than the pessimists, which were the unvaccinated. And the government of the Reserve Bank and other economists feel that as we come out of lockdown, we will again see a real pickup in consumer spending, pent-up demand, which should see hopefully another sharp V-style recovery, which is great news. Having said that, it is expected that these lockdowns, that these consumer sentiments will certainly have a drag on our growth for this year. And so the Reserve Bank has cut that down to 4%. Worryingly, though, is business sentiment. CommSec's survey suggested in Sydney that's down as low as it was in the GFC. Again, not surprising, but a worry.
Just staying with the business sector and business sentiment, Suzanne, there's a lot of discussion about whether employers in the private sector should be mandating vaccinations for their employees. It's something that the government has left to the private sector to decide. What are you hearing from the business sector about this issue?
What business needs and wants is clarity and a firm legislative framework. Particularly for small business, they don't have the big HR departments to help them navigate through the competing liabilities of vaccinations. So first off, you have the risk of being sued for being discriminatory if you mandate a vaccination program. Likewise, if you don't, you could be sued for not meeting workplace health and safety. Now, we have had the Fair Work Commission put out some guidelines as to when they feel mandation would be appropriate. The problem is at the end of it, they say you need to seek legal advice. And the onus on small business at this point in time to have to get that advice and navigate this difficult area is of great concern.
Yeah, it certainly is. And a lot of businesses are saying, well, the issue of vaccination and mandatory vaccination has become so politicized that they're concerned that they may actually lose clients, particularly, you know, if you tell a client, I'm sorry, you can't come to my restaurant, my hairdressing site or whatever because you're not vaccinated. There is a possibility that businesses may lose their business, I suppose.
It's just so hard to navigate, Fauziah. So that comes back to, again, we need the governments or whichever area should be responsible, whether it's state, whether it's federal, to come to the party and give us that legal framework that says if you're vaccinated, you can go to a restaurant. If you're not, you can't. If that's what's recommended. To leave it up to individual businesses and particularly small businesses is just too onerous. And as you say, they will be very concerned about their reputational risk with their clients. So for us in an accounting practice, if we have to say to a client, I'm sorry, you can't come if you're not vaccinated, that's our company policy, we would rather see those rules be put into legislation, whichever way is recommended businesses should go.
A little bit of good news within New South Wales. We saw the construction industry slowly coming back to life, of course, with a limited capacity. What does this mean in terms of the state's economy and the labour market, given that the construction industry is one of the biggest employers?
Oh, absolutely. Contributes 8% of our GDP. When you think of Sydney, well over 200,000 workers in construction, and many of those in those LGAs of concerns. Now, one of the issues, because there's billions of dollars of projects, is that even when you get back to 50% capacity, that does not mean you're getting back to 50% operationally. First of all, it takes time to ramp up the sites again. Second of all, they lose some efficiencies by not having all the relevant workers covering all the relevant trade areas on site. Now, in New South Wales, there has been new requirements to have vaccinations or tests. What we're hoping is that that's a doorway to getting more workers back on those sites, given, as you say, how crucial it is to the economy and the labour market. Essential.
On that point, Suzanne, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for sharing your insights with us this morning. Suzanne Haddan there from BFG Financial Services.
Thank you.